Did you know that food is not a human right? Now I know this might make some of you uncomfortable, but watch till the end of this video and I will philosophically explain to you why food is not a human right. Welcome to my page where I discuss international relations, culture, and history. If any of that interests you, make sure to follow this page. So first, let's start with where do human rights come from? Some scholars argue that human rights are natural rights and we possess them simply because we are human. They are not granted by governments but recognized by governments that humans possess these human rights. In fact, many scholars argue that human rights are meant to protect us from the tyranny of the state. In other words, if the government abuses its powers, there needs to be a check on government such as human rights and human rights organizations to protect the individual from abuse from the country or the state. Now, some other scholars argue that human rights are political creations, in other words, a social construct. Now, the scholars that believe that human rights is a political or social construct, they believe that these human rights adapt and evolve over time. This argument is less popular and personally, I don't agree with it. Now, regardless of where you think human rights comes from, there is the problem of enforcement. Now, here is a philosophical question to grapple with. If a country or a state cannot enforce a right, if they do not have the resources, does the right still exist? This is where food comes in. If a country cannot provide food to the poor, does that mean that they still possess that right? It is safe to say that every country cannot torture its citizens and they possess all the resources to do that. Therefore, being tortured is a human rights violation. Versus food, not every country has the resources or the income or the money to provide food to all of its citizens. Therefore, it is not a human right, even though it is still very important. To put it simply, a human right is something every country can enforce with no resources needed. And remember, not every right is a human right, and not everything that sounds good or sounds just is a human right necessarily. Now, I'll leave you with this thought. If human rights are meant to protect us from the government's abuse of power, then it is true that the government should not be the ones enforcing and protecting human rights, right? So where do you think human rights come from? Do you think they are discovered, or do you think that they are socially constructed? And also, who is responsible for protecting them? Thank you for watching this video. If you like international relations, culture, or history, I'm your guy. Make sure to follow. Links in bio for all my other pages, and have a great day.